the purpose of the press conference is for the Gambia delegation to the Pan-African Parliament to update us and give us briefing as to the recently held second ordinary session of the Pan-African Parliament. As you already know, on the high table, the press conference will be addressed by the chairperson of the Gambian delegation to the Pan-African Parliament, who double as the chairperson of the West African caucus at the Parliament, Pan-African Parliament, and that is Honorable Alaji Mbo. He is going to address the press conference. Next to Mbo, on his left is Honorable Swaibu Ture, National Assembly member for Woodley East, and he's also a member of the delegation. Then next to Honorable Ture is Honorable Suleiman Sao, the Gambian Malema. He is the member for Central Badibu and member of the Pan-African Parliament delegation. Then we have Honorable Salifu Jao on the extreme right. He is the National Assembly member for Jokadu, also part of the Pan-African delegation of the Gambia to the Parliament. Now, later in the process, we are hoping Honorable Maimuna Sise, nominated member, who is also a member of the delegation, to join us. So as he comes later, you'll find us on the process. So, ladies and gentlemen of the press, I will hand over the mic to my colleague, Gilbert. He is the coordinator of the APPN. Gilbert is organizing African journalists on parliamentary affairs, monitoring all parliamentary issues in this continent, across the continent, I mean, West Africa, Central Africa, across. So he is currently based in the Gambia, covering Senegal, Sierra Leone, mainly West Africa. Now, he will take us through the introductory part, and then we will hand over to the MPs to address the Parliament. So for your information, Honorable Maimuna Sise is right now with us, nominated member and member of the Parliament, as I said earlier. So back to Gilbert, who will introduce himself briefly and then take us through.
Thank you very much, Ibrahima. So just to add up to Ibrahima's introduction, my name is Gilbert Bokiti Boifio, and I'm the coordinator of the African Parliamentary Press Network, APPN. Now, we are very grateful to the delegation from the National Assembly of the Gambia to the Pan-African Parliament for agreeing to this press conference. And I must say that this is the first of its kind ever in the history of the Pan-African Parliament. And so Gambia finds itself in a very high position for leading the way on this particular initiative. And we are most grateful to our MPs for agreeing to this, because more than not, the PAP holds 4 meetings in a year, and our MPs go to this meeting. But of course, when they come back, apart from the report that they lay before plenary, that is all the engagement. But we think that there should be more engagement on what transpired there, because a lot of decisions are taken that eventually affect every African citizen. And so they need to be aware about this, so that even next time when the delegation is going, some of us can approach them to tell them that these are our issues. We want you to advocate for this and that on our behalf. So we think that this engagement is very, very important. And it's going to be the first time, but we intend to do more of this engagement. So hopefully, the next meeting, we are expecting that when they come back, we'll do another press conference. again, as part of efforts to ensure that the engagement with our MPs and also the Pan-African Parliament is sustained, we are hoping to introduce series of radio and TV programs where we are going to review the entire session. And of course, we are going to have our MPs being part of it. We are also hoping to have committee chairpersons of the various committees at the Pan-African Parliament also being guests for that show. So we are encouraging the media in Gambia to be actively involved in this process, because we designed this purposely for you so that you can also educate our brothers and sisters out there to know more about what our MPs are doing on our behalf at the Pan-African Parliament, and also know more about decisions that have been taken at that level that affects you and I. So I will now hand over to Honorable Mbo for his remarks, and then the team can brief us on what transpired at the just ended second ordinary session of the Pan-African Parliament. So Honorable Mbo.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon to everyone. Like Gilbert said, this is the first time we are organizing such a press conference for the Pan-African Parliament. The Pan-African Parliament is an organ of the African Union. Just like we have the European Parliament for the European Union, we also have the Pan-African Parliament, which is a continental parliament. I'm sure most of us are aware that we also have regional parliaments like ECOWAS that deals with West Africa, and we also have EALA, which is the East African Legislative Assembly, but we have a bigger parliament called the Pan-African Parliament, and we've started since 2004. Right now, every country actually is asked to nominate 5 members to be represented in the parliament, which actually sits in South Africa, in Midrand in South Africa. Now, the 5 members that represent the Pan-African Parliament, like Ibrahim said earlier, I am Honorable Mbo, the chair of the committee, the chair of the head of the delegation, and I have Honorable Swaibu on my left here, and Honorable Suleiman Saho, and Honorable Jao, and Honorable Maimuna as part of the delegation from the Gambia. I am serving my second term in the Pan-African Parliament, and currently I'm the chair of the West African Caucus. The parliament is 5 members from each country, which means out of the 55 countries in Africa, each country is represented by 5 members. Now, the membership must contain a woman and must also contain a member of the opposition, just to ensure that we have a very fair and very balanced team. And that's the delegation of the Gambia. Now, the PAP, like I said earlier, is to ensure full participation of the African people. That's the mandate, just to ensure that, which means we are the voices of the African people at the continental level. Most of us actually, or most of you actually, you hear the AU is doing this or AU is doing that, but for the most part, that's exactly where it ends. And now that we have the Pan-African Parliament, which is a continental parliament, we serve as your voices at the level of the continent, in South Africa. So the PAP is the platform. Normally they call it PAP, but it means Pan-African Parliament. But most people actually know it as PAP, as the acronym. It's intended as a platform for the people from African states involved in discussion and decision making and problem solving. That's essentially what we do. So the members are designated. We have some countries also that actually may designate people to go. For example, remember what happened with Mali? They didn't have an elected parliament, but they have designations where they take 5 people to send them to the PAP, but they must conform to this membership. So the ultimate aim of the Pan-African Parliament is to be a full parliament. Right now, we are not making any laws. Right now, what we are doing is we are making consultation with for the African people, which means the only thing we do is actually to review policies, to make consultations, and also to advise the African Union. Also to play an oversight on the budget of the African Union. That's what we are doing right now. But we do not have the powers right now to be making laws. However, the African Union actually has come up with the convention. And now we want countries to sign that convention, and then the PAP would have full legislative body like a parliament, like a full parliament. So far, only 15 countries actually have signed. Out of the 15, 7 came from West Africa, and Gambia actually has also signed that to give powers to the continental parliament to be able to make laws for the country. So as far as we are speaking, the West Africa actually is taking the lead. Like 50% of the people that actually have signed come from West Africa, and Gambia has signed, Senegal has signed, Niger and Ghana has signed also, and Mali, they also have signed. In fact, in the next few weeks, we'll be going on a mission to the other West African countries, 3 of them that have not signed yet, like Cape Verde, Ivory Coast, and Liberia, to encourage them to sign. Now, every year we have 4 sessions. 2 sessions are dedicated for committee work only, just like we have committees here. We also have 15 committees in the African Parliament. And personally, I belong to the Committee on Education, Training, Science, Technology, and Innovation. And Honorable Swaibu sits on the Committee for Human Rights, and Honorable Saho sits on the Committee for Agriculture, and Honorable Jao sits on the Committee for Monetary Affairs, and Honorable Maimuna is now on the Committee for Economic Development, Mining, and Energy. And that's exactly where. So all of us actually, we also have to sit in one committee. You can only be in one committee, and no 2 countries actually can be on the same committee. So we make it in a very democratic process to ensure that at least every country is actually represented in 5 different committees, and we do our work. So the other 2 sessions actually is our ordinary sessions. And that's where we actually discuss about issues. And that's where we discuss policies. That's where we discuss budgets and all issues pertaining to the continent of Africa. Those are the 2 sessions. So every year, you will see that we will be going in around end of February to March. We also go in May, we also go in August, and we also go in October. And all this is actually done to ensure that we cover the 4 sessions. So principally, the objective of the Pan-African Parliament, which is the PAP, is to facilitate and oversee implementation of the AU policies, objectives, and programs. And we also work on promoting human rights across the continent, as well as good governance. We also participate in creating awareness among the peoples of Africa on the AU's objectives. Again, when you look at the AU, which is the main authority, they are different. They are separated into different organs. You have the Assembly Heads of State that sits on top. That is the presidents of the countries. You also have PAP as the organs, which is the Continental Parliament, and you also have PRC and etc. etc. So there are several organs, and each of the organs is actually tasked with a very different mandate. Now, we also do in promoting and coordinating the REX, which is the regional economic communities, on measures, programs, and activities, and also prepare our own rules of procedure. We also have standing orders. We call it rules of procedure. We also have standing orders on what we use to govern us. The standing orders was actually changed last year, and that actually governs what we do. So if a member actually does not conform to the principles of the standing order, we call it to order, just like what we have here, point of order. It's the same situation. Now, this session, or the last session we actually had, is the ordinary session from May 8th to the 2nd of June, under the theme to accelerate the implementation of the African Continental Free Trade Area, that's AFCTA, of the Union for 2023. And we had the guest of honor, who is also the chairperson of the Union, Honorable or His Excellency Azali Azumani, who was also a member of PAP before, from the Comoros. He was a former member of PAP. In fact, we had several current and past heads of state that actually came through PAP. One of them was Draman from Ghana. We also had the Ghana, Keta, that also came from PAP, a lot of them. Now, we hosted a workshop, and the workshop essentially was, what do we do as a continent to accelerate the AFCTA? And we invited various speakers along the way. Now, various experts from the Secretariat actually explained to us really where we are, because right now it's in, it's in full motion. And what the AFCTA intends to do, essentially trying to promote trade within the African continent. Because if you look at the trade among ourselves, it's really very, very low. Now, what this is going to do is now it's going to create one of the biggest markets in the world where African countries actually can trade among themselves instead of actually depending on other countries for importation. And you know what that means. The more we trade outside the continent, Now we're going to use other currencies like the dollars, the euro, and others, and that actually has a very negative impact on our on inflation. So to avoid that, the AU came up with this continental market where we all come together and trade. Now, among the issues or among the developments we have now is the creation of the Pan-African payment system. Right now, as a country, most of the businesses, when they want to transact outside the Gambia, they normally use SWIFT to do the transfer. You submit your dollars to your bank or to financial institution, and they convert that into dollars in the other side. So now, what the African Union came up with through the Continental Free Trade Area, they came up with something they call Pan-African Payment and Settlement System. What this system is going to do, for example, when a Gambian businessman does business with a Ghanaian, instead of buying dollars or euros, you don't have to do that. You can settle them in dollars, and when they buy something from the Gambia here, also they settle it in Ghana cedis. So that means we are going to eliminate the dollar itself from the equation. And what that's going to do is it's going to actually help the Gambia, for example, because now the demand for dollars actually is going to be really very low, and the essential thing it's going to do is it actually allow the dollar rate to actually go down. Now, if you look at the dollar rate, for example, for the past 10-15 years, you're going to see that it actually has been going up. And when it goes up, actually, is the average person that would actually suffer. To avert that, the Continental Free Trade Area now is going to pilot this. The first transaction was tested between Ghana and Nigeria, and it was done successfully. Now they're going to use the WAMS, which is the West African Monetary Zone, to connect them. And in the next 2 years, all the central banks in the continent will be connected to this payment system. It's called PAPIS, which is the Pan-African Payment and Settlement System. So when we do business with South Africa, we don't have to worry about dollars. We don't have to worry about euros. When we do business with Kenya, we don't have to worry about all those things. The only thing you're going to do is we're going to settle them in Kenya shillings, and when they do business with the Gambian counterparts, they settle them in dollars through our own central banks. So really, that's one of the biggest developments as far as this is concerned. Another area we also discussed during this session was also a workshop on climate policy, equity, and the theme was the African continent at a crossroads. The issue of climate change is real. And again, research actually has shown that the West Africa and Southern Africa would be the most affected in climate change. And you're going to see that a lot of issues that's actually happening in the country right now. You see the rains that actually just occurred last week. Just the first rain, and we are in trouble. Now, can you imagine what's actually happening? So now countries actually have used various mechanisms in terms of adaptation measures and also in terms of being able to sustain some of these changes. Now, the workshop actually allowed us to interact with the Pan-African Climate Justice, and we came up with resolutions, which Honorable Ture is going to read about the recommendation we actually made, at the level of the, of the Parliament, together with our other partners that actually participated. Now, during this session also, we had invited the president of Kenya, which we normally do. We invite very high-profile people and give them a topic to talk on, and then he really came and talk about climate justice. And I think Honorable Ruto stated that there is only one way the world can achieve the zero aspirations by 2050, and it's for the countries that are negative emissions, mostly African countries, to be able to make for those that are on course of missing the 2050, because that's a target. But most of the developed countries, they are not missing the objective, and there's a likelihood that they may not be able to meet it. But with the African countries, which are we are in the negative, some are really extremely low. We work together to ensure that we bridge that gap to do that. Now, the president actually indicated 3 fundamental things during the course of discussion. One, he said that there's a need to relocate the industrial production. If you look at Africa right now, we export our raw materials, minerals, etc., for processing. But those countries right now, they are unable to meet the carbon emissions, which is the greenhouse gases. They cannot meet it. So what he's suggesting is why can't those industries come to Africa? We do the processing here, very close to those, where they mine them. 2 things can going to happen. That means it's going to create jobs on the African continent and also going to reduce the emissions from the other continent. I think this could be a win-win situation, and that's one of the issues that he gave they told us. And he gave an example. For example, Africa exports 80 million tons of iron ore annually. And this is what they're going to use to export it to China, Europe, and that's what they use to make steel. And there's no factory here that makes steel in the Gambia here. Most African countries, we don't have that. So we export the raw material, they go process it and bring it back. So we say that now, when we do that, if we're able to be successful in actually, doing the processing in this continent here, it has the potential to reduce the emissions by almost 7 million tons of carbon dioxide. which you think is really excellent. Now, the other one also, he was talking about bauxite, which is actually used in the manufacture of aluminium. Same situation. It has the potential to provide 1.3 to 1.5 gigatons of CO2 every year. Now, can you imagine these three objectives which actually can turn Africa into, a global superpower, at the same time helping in the emissions. Now, the other area we also have discussion was also with the Pan-African climate justice, which I mentioned, and then we also came out with some very strong recommendation and very strong resolutions, which Honorable Toure is going to talk about in just a moment. So, in short, we had a very wonderful 2-3 weeks discussion relating to issues pertaining to the issues in Africa. And because we are there to represent the African people, dealing with justice, climate justice, we also dealt with finances, which he's going to talk about in just a moment. So before we get to the recommendation, which we're going to make last, I want to give the floor to Honorable Saho to talk to us also briefly about what transpired in the caucus on youth and also at the Committee on Agriculture before we move to the other members. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Mbo, the head of the delegation and the chairperson of Western Caucus, for that marathon briefing. This is a very important dialogue that we are having, and I want to salute our comrade, Gilbert, who is taking or making PAP closer to the people, because this is a way of people holding us accountable. Our head of delegation briefly tells you what PAP is all about. And I just want to talk about short history of PAP. It's all about Pan-Africanism. We all know that African continent, they strive to see to it that the continent is liberated politically and economically integrated. So Africans leaders met at Addis Ababa and felt that there is a need to form OAU. So PAP is an organ of African organization or African Union. Now, PAP, as our chairperson said, the delegation comes from all the countries except countries that are under sanction. They are not represented for the reason maybe there's a coup d'etat or whatsoever it is. But apart from that, almost all the countries are represented in PAP. Now, gender is put into consideration, and at the same time, party pluralism is also entertained, whereby it's not dominated by a singular political party. Now, coming to the role of the committee. The Committee on Agriculture, we successfully tried to made model laws, because as our president alluded, we are not a full-fledged law making body. So what we do is we make model laws on soil management and climate change. Now, soil management, the soil is the medium where we grow crops and where we plant our trees. So our soil need to be managed. If the soil is not managed, the fertility is gone, we will remain poorer and poorer, poverty will be in increase, our lives will be threatened. Now, this model law was passed in the parliament, adopted. Now, countries now will look at the model law and make and domesticate it in their countries. Now, we talk of the climate change, and the committee also sent delegation to the last COP. But now, what is the talk of the town is the COP27. How are we going there as Africans? What do we want from COP27? Are we prepared as a continent? This is what that has been discussed by the committee and was put forward to the members. We debated on it and resolutions were made. Now, traditional medicine was also discussed at the committee level, because we believe that it's high time Africans go back to their own traditional medicines, which were very useful in the past. So why not we have group of researchers who will invest their time and energy to research into the traditional medicine. That also was discussed at the committee level, and reports were led and they were also recommended. Now, coming to the youths, we all know that Africa's population, 60 to 65% is dominated by the youths. But where are they in terms of employment? Where are they in terms of education? Where are they in terms of migration? Why are our youths leaving the continent, all migrating into the Europe? So these were the issues that were discussed, and there was a youth dialogue at the beginning of the year that was held in Morocco. So I want to say that the youth caucus in Pan-African Parliament is making a lot of giant efforts to see to it that the youths in the continents are connected. The youths in the continent are supported in terms of what? Skills, in terms of ICT. So, but there are limitations, there are challenges in terms of resources, because it was our aim not to only limit our operation to South Africa, but to go beyond South Africa. Now, coming to events that happened, we celebrated African Liberation Day thanks to our president, Chief Chorombira, who made a historic organization of African Liberation Day, because it was celebrated in the past with kind of statements, but this time it was well celebrated in a manner of showing our culture of who we are as Africans. They were displayed, a lot of African materials were brought there to promote local business also. So I think we have to salute the members, particularly Professor Matoli, who was one of the organizers, to see to it that the event is more African, and we try to recall, what our forefathers went through and where are we heading as a continent, and our Agenda 2063, how are we going to make sure that it's achieved. And another significant thing that happened on that day was the speech, made by Professor Lumumba. It was a virtual speech, but it was so motivating. And one thing that I like of the speech was, how are we going to resource PAP? So it's high time PAP would not depend on foreign support. Africans must be ready to support. Our prime ministers and our foreign ministers must be ready to support. That's why to have this press conference in the Gambia is highly important. We want our foreign minister and the head of the government of the Gambia, President Adam Barrow, to see how, when they meet as heads of state, to support Pan-African Parliament. Pan-African Parliament is a continental parliament that should be well resourced to become independent. We cannot depend on foreign support to make decisions for the country. We all know that the competition, global competition, is very high. Last but no means the least, as I said, we have challenges. PAP is facing a lot of challenges in terms of finance, in terms of our visa issue. This is a problem of our continent. How do we want to see Africa in the next 25 years to come? We want to see if Africa, where visa restrictions are taken out. You understand? Because we cannot promote intertrade when we are limited, when we don't have visas. And another one is about the term limit of our African leaders. What do we see in Africa? Africa is no more secure. Africa is in chaos politically. And whenever this problem erupts, people have to cross border. They become migrants or they become refugees. So in order to stop that, we believe the term limit should be highly recognized by African leaders. It's all of us. So is another way of mitigating the violence or the crimes or the political upheavals that we have in our continent. So we thank you for your attention, and we believe this dialogue will continue to take PAP to the grassroots. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Saho. So we're going to move to Honorable Jao to give us a briefing on what transpired in his committee. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Head of Delegation. Okay. Okay. My greetings to the entire membership, Mr. Gilbert, and then the media fraternity, all here present. I'll be deliberating on my committee, that is the Committee on Monetary and Finance. This is the committee of the Pan-African Parliament that is responsible for coming up with the budget of PAP. Now, I'll be going back a bit. When PAP was created in 2004, the budget was around $25 million. But gradually, it was reduced to 11 million. Why? Because then the committees were not very vibrant. That's why the budget was reduced. and it was prepared by the staff, not the members themselves. That's why year in and year out, they just copy and paste. Every year they bring a budget which is very low for PAP operations. And even that budget which was limited, the biggest chunk of it goes to the payment of services, that is the staff that they employ. But the members themselves benefited very little from that finance. Now, when this new PAP came under the leadership of Chief Fortune Chorombura last year, we thought it wise that PAP should be an organ that should be very vibrant. In doing so, our committee, we are asked to convey last March in Midran before the actual statutory committee meetings, which was held in April. We were there in March in order to look into the budget of PAP for 2024. Then we were there for a week. We restructured the budget, and then at least we make it bigger so that committee operations can be well catered. Then when the committees were there in April, we also consulted each of the committees for them to come up with their own budget line, the amount that they would need, the programs that they would want to undertake within the year 2024, so that we'll be able to put it together before the PRC will meet in Ethiopia to finalize the 2024 budget. And it was successful. All the committees, the 15 committees were engaged. They come up with their budgets, and then we put all those figures together, and then we finalize the PAP budget for 2024. And then it is submitted to the PRC. Now we are hoping and praying that it is endorsed so that PAP will come back to its normal fit. And the other reason also that I want to talk about the financial constraints of PAP is that still now there are member countries that are reluctant to be paying their annual dues. Because if they don't pay their dues, the AU will not have the wherewithal, they will not have enough money that they would be able to give to PAP so that PAP will be able to do its operations without any hindrance. So on a nutshell, I think I will end it here and hand it over to my other colleague, Honorable Cisse. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll move to Honorable quickly.
Thank you so much. I would like to start with the existing protocol to thank our able guest, which is Mr. Gelb. I think the mic is on. No? Are you on? Okay. It's okay. It's on. All right. As I started with, I want to start with the existing protocol to welcome the able guest and the media personnel, which is Mr. Gilbert. Thank you so much for seeing you again in the Gambia. Where our last visit in South Africa, you are one of the participants over there to the media. I thank you all, and I thank all the media fraternity present here and all my colleagues, especially more to my able delegation leader, which is Alajimbo, a veteran, a good leader for that matter, which I learned much while we are away not only in the Gambia, because Gambia, everybody, we are all running for our heads. We don't have time. But when we are over there, we are just a family. I happen to be the sister of the delegations, but I can easily guarantee that these are colleagues, they are comrades, and they are easy to deal with. When we leave this country, we are no party color anymore. What we are all Gambians representing the National Assembly of the Gambia, and I'm proud of them. I am proud to be with them, and I am proud to work with them. They really, really deserve a better chance. If there's another chance for me to work with them, I will definitely go with that. Thank you again. I would like to just go a little bit about the gender, which I would like to participate a little bit, because for this past 1 year, gender was the much activities I was dealing with. And the Pan-African Parliament, I don't want to go to history because all the previous speakers has already dwell on that. But easily I can just say that we have so many issues dealing with the African women, which PAP can be a solution to make sure that the inequality within the gender gap or in gender imparity can also be remedied by going through the PAP's recommendations and the modalities put in place for the gender equity in the world. Moreover, to the continent. The first matter that was presented to adopt was in relationship to the International Women's Day, which is on the 8th of March, 2023, where in all caucus related among all other rest of the world under the DEMI, for conclusion and digital world innovations, technology and gender equality, guided by the Women's Day, the caucus made everything possible, that recommendations, and the day was celebrated to the fullest. To the women to see themselves, they are no more lip service to the world. We want to be part of where decisions are making. Some of those recommendations, we recognize the celebration of the Women's Day, girls of championing and transformative technology and digital educations to explore and address the impact of the digital gender gap and widening economic and social inequality. These are some of the issues affecting the women. And I don't think we ourselves know that we are affected by it. But how can we know and how can we remedy it? We have to be on the table to be discussed. Wherever you want to be, if you want to have a voice, you need to be participated fully. And women, we have a stigma in ourselves, which sometimes the self-confidence deter us from our achievements. And we would like to see that at least when you have the power to sit or you have the forum to sit, try to exercise, build the self-confidence, try to deliver what you are able to do. Let the world know that when they give us the chance, we can deliver. And I think women are willing to do so. And by guiding us, we are not in competitive with the men. But by guiding us, allowing us to prevail also, that also will help. Last, March, we were in February, we were in Kenya. I was very impressed with Kenyan, some of their electoral laws. Kenya, we know that to build on women's capacity or women participation in globally or in economically, Kenya, I think they take a very defensive system for women where they can be defended and they can have their cake even though they don't have to go through the political platform. They have a law in Kenyan law, which is they have a affirmative law whereby certain constituencies or certain regions, those are especially for women. By doing so, I think they are trying to empower the women in a sense that when they go to the political landscape, the men don't give them the real chances for them to display or to surrender their franchises to be part of the political alliance. But they don't give them that chance. But for them, the affirmative laws has protected them. For women to have at least 47 counties are already available for women to be part of those seats. Those are vacant at the National Assembly. So some of these things are part of the demi of a Pan-African Parliament to see that women are empowered. By empowering somebody, he or her need to know her civic rights. When you know your right, you know where you can pursue it. So some of these things are very paramount and is very important, and Pan-African Parliament, the caucus also are always working on to see that anything we see that it's going to be the betterment of the women in the future, we are working on it. By conclusion, I would like to present that the last March, I was able to be Pan-African delegate to US to attend the CWS meeting, which I attended with 5 of my colleagues from Pan-African Parliament. We represent the PAP, the whole continent, and our participation into that also was very phenomenal to the development of the women in the globe and the women in the continent. Africa need to be aligned with what we are known for. Our traditionals, our cultures need to be protected, and the cyberbully on the women also are very paramount. And we are the victim. We are the most users of those social medias, but we became our own victims of our own self. So protecting yourself is protecting your own right. So if I have anything to add, I think this is what I'm going to leave with the rest. I thank you all.
Thank you very much, Honorable. Now we move to Honorable Swaibu quickly to give us a summary of the recommendations we made during the session, so that we can bring the session to conclusion.
Yeah, thank you very much, Head of Delegation, Chairman of this meeting. We also thank the press, most especially Mr. Gilbert, for this very innovative idea. It's a very good initiative because the delegation has always been thinking of doing this. That when we come back, we will all the time, we will want to have a press conference or press briefing of some sort to be able to explain this to the Gambian people. But I also believe that eventually we are also thinking, how do you reach the people fully on the in the grassroots? I think we'll have to use our own languages that the people speak, because the Pan-African Parliament is saying is to go to the people. You know, you should not just stay at the elites, but you should go to the people. So I believe that we'll have to have different engagements to ensure that the press help us to get this to the people. Apart from that, my role is to inform the press about the resolutions that we have passed there. Like the head of delegation has said, we advise the AU authority. We are not yet a lawmaking body, but we are an advisory body. We make model laws, we come up with resolutions, we come up with recommendations, which we give to the African Union Authority for them to, it will help them to form policies, etc., and be able to solve problems in Africa in their deliberations. So this last meeting that we have in the Pan-African Parliament, that was done in Midran on 1st June, we come up with the resolutions. We pass the resolutions, we also come up with recommendations. And some of the reports were also adopted. One has already been mentioned by the member, Saho, on traditional medicine, which was very well debated. A lot of knowledge come out of the debates. And then recommendations were done, and that was a resolution that Africa should not leave traditional medicine behind and concentrate on external medicine. Because some of these medicines coming from outside have chemical content, which also affects the body. So, but Africa is dependent on roots and leaves and all this, which are herbs that are natural herbs. They usually don't have much repercussion on the health of the people. So we need to use that. Also, we had this on financial transaction, on tax and climate action. That was also very well deliberated, and that was also something that was adopted with resolutions. Also, we were promoting peace, promotion of peace and security in Africa. As you know, so many countries in Africa are in crisis, are in security crisis. You can name it. Even West Africa here, you know that Guinea is in some kind of crisis. There was a coup d'etat there, unconstitutional methods of taking over government. You go to Mali, there is armed rebellion there, terrorist activities there, and so on and so forth. Nigeria, terrorism, etc. So, many countries are affected. So there was this resolution on peace and security. How do we create early warning system to ensure that when crises are coming, we should be able to have methods of stopping them. Climate policy also, he has mentioned that when Ruto came, he spoke very hard on that. Equity for Africa. How do Africa benefit from this policy on climate? Africa is emitting very little, but we are the ones that are bearing the major brunt of climate change. He has said, when the rain came, the first thing it has done to us in URR, I think the press must be aware of that. So that was one thing. Also, like I said, the current situation in Sudan was a topical issue there, which was very, very well emphasized. A lot of debate on that. Even the Women's Caucus also came up with a report on that until it was adopted, and we've even given them the go-ahead to go to Sudan, to be able to discuss about the women, how the women are suffering in Sudan, how the children are suffering in this war, and the vulnerable people, the disabled, what is happening to them, and so on, to come and report back to the African Parliament. Yes, so recommendations, as I said, have also come on this climate equity, inclusion on digital world. How do we innovate the technologies to ensure that we can improve gender equality in Africa through digital formations. Also, youth dialogue, he's mentioned that. They went to Morocco and there was this youth dialogue. But one thing that featured in the youth dialogue is that the African youth are really, really in predicament because they are leaving Africa. They cannot stay in Africa. They are forcing their way, life and death to go through this Mediterranean journey and die in the sea all the time. How do we, really deal with the issues of youth to ensure that that is minimized? That would really help Africa, because there are so many things we can do here. Agriculture, our land is fertile. We have all the resources in Africa. So we must really look at the issue of the African youth, research in their problems, know the solutions to those problems and apply them so that the African youth also will take up. Yes, I think in terms of recommendation, like I said, in Sudan, the African theme for this year, the theme is mentioned, is accelerating the African continental free trade area. It's a strategic significance for the PAP. And we want this thing to reach to the grassroots of the people so that we can produce. Africa must produce in their own way. And silencing the guns is one big thing. We have to silence the guns in Africa. Every effort that we must do that to silence the guns in Africa to ensure that Africa gets peace and then we take off in progress. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Ture, and thank you very much also everybody that's here right now. We want to also take this opportunity to thank the African Parliamentary Press Network for organizing such a press conference. And I would urge us among ourselves and to think about how can we get our own Gambian journalists to South Africa, because other countries actually do that, both the traditional media houses and the online media houses. We need to find a way to, at least every session, we try to get 2 or 3 of them. Maybe we can do a discussion, behind the scenes with the budget that's actually coming. Because when you look at Ghana, Nigeria, Sierra Leone, all of them, they take along their media houses so they can actually know what are we doing there. Because every year you hear Mo is in South Africa, Maimuna is South Africa, but what are you doing there? So we need to take our own people so they can spread the word, for them to know exactly, just traveling. We are not traveling just for tourism's sake, but we are doing that to work for the benefit of African people. So we need to find a way to ensure that we take our own media houses along when we are going. So we want to thank you again once more, and also, like you said, to call on the president and also the foreign minister, Tangara, to ensure that all the dues for the African Union actually are settled. Because we cannot depend on foreign donors to develop this continent. We cannot do that. We also cannot depend on their monies also to run the African Union. Because again, like they said, who owns the piper? So you know exactly what that means. So let's try to raise funds within ourselves, and then let's try to ensure that we support PAP, we support the African Union from our own funds instead of actually having to depend on other areas. And also ask the foreign minister Tangara, who we're gonna meet also, to talk to his colleagues also to ensure that they ratify the protocol. Even though Gambia actually has ratified, but let's get his counterpart to ratify so that we can have a full-fledged continental parliament, so that the AU can be in check in terms of the financials and in terms of the policies that actually work and that doesn't work. And on that note, we want to thank you, and also to thank our president, Chief Fortune Charombira. That is the president or the speaker of the Pan-African Parliament, and also the office of the clerk, for helping us to organize such a forum with the media houses in and outside the Gambia. Thank you once again, and we'll see you another time. Thank you.
Yeah.
We can,
yes,
we can take few,
maybe-
if you have questions, yes, we can take few questions, yeah? In
yeah,
case you have any, yeah.
only one or two, because they've started
Yes, yes.
calling them back into the chamber.
Yes.
So if they,
Yes, you can go ahead. Yeah.
Good afternoon. I am Keba AF Ture, Royal Newspaper. I want to thank the members of the delegation for your powerful elaborations. I will quickly go to my question, and it goes to Honorable Mbo. Honorable Mbo, I remember when you were intervening at the just concluded session, you recommended one of the issues that you recommended has to do with coming up with a continental language in ensuring that a ACFTA agreement, flourishes on the continent. So I want to know, after you have made this recommendation, what was the reaction of PAP, and how far are you, meaning PAP, how far are you in terms of, actualizing this recommendation? Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you very much, Keba, for that question. Actually, yes, indeed, I made a recommendation for us to come up with a continental language. Because if you look at African continent right now, even currencies alone, money, currencies, we have more than 30 different currencies across the continent. Languages also, is a barrier. And again, if you look at the education system, maybe that's something we really need to look at. We really need to look at our curriculum just to ensure that it matches with our developmental aspirations. So, and I think it's also important that we look for one African language and then try to teach it across the continent, so that in the next 10, 15, 20 years, anywhere you go, you speak Swahili, or you speak Fulani, or you speak Yoruba, or Wolof, or Manding, whatever it is, somebody will be able to talk to you. But right now, we use, even if you are unable to speak good English, they can try to castigate you, which I don't see any sense in it. So let's try to develop our own continental language. So I think the committee on culture, on education, which actually I'm a member now, I think we're going to take it up to see exactly what we can do to develop a continental language. For example, Fulani, Amharic, etc., or Swahili. Because you see that right now we have more than 250 million people that actually can speak Swahili on the continent. So you have probably more than 70 million that could actually speak, Fulani and other Arabic languages. So why can't we take one or two and nurture that into a continental language? So in the next 20, 30 years, at least wherever you talk, you can say this is an African language, and we'll be able to communicate among ourselves and to do a better business, particularly in this African continental free trade area. Thank you. Take one more and last question if you have any before we disperse. Yeah, okay. So I think we can close it here. Again, thank you once again. We'll do it another time. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Journalists, can you stay? We have one announcement for only journalists. If the honorable members leave, then media, you stay. We have one announcement for you. Yeah, honorable members, you can go.